The Enigma of Teach and the Legacy of Darkness. When we talk about Marshall D. Teach, better known as Blackbeard, there's one question that has haunted One Piece fans for decades. How can one man possess two devil fruit powers when it's said to be physically impossible? Some believe it's due to a unique body structure. Others claim it's connected to ancient knowledge about devil fruits. But what if the truth isn't physical at all? What if it's spiritual? This theory proposes that Teach is not merely a man with a strange body. He's a being who carries three distinct wills within him, three consciousnesses that coexist and constantly clash inside his soul. Teach's body is not what's special. His spirit is. Those three wills are his own. The original will of Marshall D. Teach, the dreamer. The ambitious D, the man who believes in destiny and freedom, deep down still following the ideals of the ancient will of D, the will of Rox D. Zebek, the man of chaos and greed. The tyrant who once challenged the gods themselves and sought to dominate the world. The will of Imu, the dark sovereign who sits on the empty throne, whose essence is sealed inside the Yami Yami no Mi, the fruit of darkness. This triad of wills explains the paradox that Teach has always been. At times, he seems cheerful, hopeful, and almost naive, a man who laughs and dreams big. At others, he's cruel, merciless, and manipulative, as if another presence is guiding his actions. And whenever he uses the Yami Yami no Mi, he becomes colder, quieter, consumed by a will that doesn't feel human at all. That's not a coincidence. That's possession. The spiritual mechanism, Oda has shown us multiple times that in the world of One Piece, a will can survive beyond death. Roger's will lives on through Luffy and the new generation. Joy Boy's will lingers within history itself. So why couldn't a devil fruit also be a vessel of will? What if devil fruits don't just contain powers, but also consciousness? That's what the Yami Yami no Mi truly is. Not just a fruit of darkness, but a prison of wills. It devours everything, even light. Because it was created from Imu's original essence, the same darkness that swallowed the ancient world 800 years ago. When Teach ate the fruit, he didn't just gain power. He inherited the soul that slept inside it, the shadow of Imu, and with it, the remnant of another, Rox D. Zebek, who once tried to steal that same power from the gods. From that moment on, Teach stopped being one man. He became a battlefield of spirits, a chaotic fusion of ambition, greed, and divine darkness. The paradox. Within, if you observe. Teach closely, Oda leaves us subtle hints about this internal conflict. His mood swings, his unpredictable laughter, the way he talks to himself as if arguing with unseen voices. These are not random quirks. They're the surface symptoms of three different wills fighting for control. And here's the key. Marco once said, Teach's body is weird. But what if it's not his body? It's his soul? His abnormal physiology could be a reflection of an unstable spiritual state, the side effect of carrying multiple entities within him. That would make Teach not an evolution of humanity, but a spiritual hybrid, the only living being capable of sustaining three wills without collapsing, and that's why he can wield more than one fruit. The mirror of Luffy. If Luffy is the embodiment of freedom, Teach is the embodiment of chaos. If Luffy's fruit, the Hito Hito no Mi, model Nika, symbolizes liberation and laughter, then Teach's fruit, the Yami Yami no Mi, represents control and consumption. They are opposites by nature. One creates, the other absorbs. One shines, the other devours. And yet both carry the will of D. Luffy represents the D that laughs in the face of fate. Teach represents the D that weeps under the weight of darkness. Two sides of the same coin, the sun and the abyss, and that's why their final battle won't simply be a fight for supremacy. It will be a clash of wills between freedom, greed, and manipulation. Between Nika's joy and the curse of Imu Blackbeard's body is not a mystery of biology. It's a prison of souls, the will of Teach who dreams, the will of Zebek who conquers, and the will of Imu who controls. Three forces, three truths, one body, the living embodiment of conflict itself. And through that body, Oda may be showing us the ultimate truth about the will of D, that every era must carry both the light and the darkness necessary to reshape the world. The man we call Blackbeard may not be a man at all. He's a vessel, the crossroads where freedom, greed, and godhood collide. The forbidden fruit of Imu and the curse of Xebec. When we look at the history of the world in one piece, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. Everything, from the celestial dragons to the void century, began with a forbidden power that no one dares to name. And if Imu-Sama truly stands above gods and kings, then it's impossible that she's merely human. Her presence defies time, her aura feels ancient, and even the Gorosei bow before her as if she were something beyond mortality. So, who, or what is Imu? And what kind of power could make even the world government fear the truth? This theory suggests that Imu is the origin of all devil fruits, that before there were hundreds of fruits scattered across the seas, there was only one, the Yami Yami no Mi, the fruit of darkness born from Imu's own will. The primordial power in the beginning, there was balance. The sun and the void, the sea and the sky, the ancient world existed in harmony. But that balance was broken when a being, later known as Imu, discovered a way to separate the essence of power from the soul itself. Using forbidden knowledge, Imu created the first artificial life form, a fruit capable of manifesting will into ability. She poured her consciousness into it, her emotions, her desires, her need to control. And from that act of creation came the first curse, the Yami Yami no Mi. Unlike later devil fruits, which granted elements, transformation, or strength, this fruit granted something far more dangerous: dominion. The power to consume anything, light, matter, and even souls. Imu, now fused with the fruit, became a living god, but at a cost. The fruit began to feed on her will, amplifying her fear, her obsession, and her lust for order. It consumed her humanity, leaving only the idea of control. From that day onward, Imu was no longer a person. She was the void itself. And from her, the Age of Devils began. Roxdy Xebec, the man who challenged the void centuries later, a man appeared who uncovered fragments of this ancient truth. Roxdy Xebec, a pirate with ambitions that dwarfed even Roger's, somehow learned that the world was ruled not by kings, but by an immortal being hiding behind the world government. He sought the forbidden fruit, believing that by consuming it, he could become the true god of the seas, a being who could challenge heaven itself. But what Xebec didn't understand was that the fruit wasn't a tool of freedom. It was a curse of submission. The moment he tried to claim it, the will of Imu struck back. That's the real story behind God Valley. Not a simple clash between Roger and Garp, but a desperate battle to stop Xebec from awakening the void itself. According to this theory, Xebec did manage to touch the Yami Yami no Mi, and in doing so, he absorbed part of Imu's essence. But the fruit rejected him, marking his soul with eternal darkness before his body was destroyed, and that's why his presence never truly vanished. His soul remained bound to the Yami Yami no Mi, sealed within it like a ghost, waiting for another D to set it free. The curse transmitted. This explains why the Yami Yami no Mi behaves unlike any other fruit in existence. Every power in One Piece has a limit, except this one. It swallows fire, ice, magma, lightning, even gravity. It absorbs the abilities of others, not just physically, but spiritually, because it was never a fruit meant for mortals. It was the container of Imu's will, corrupted by Xebec's ambition, cursed to seek a new host. When Teach consumed it, he became that host. And for the first time in centuries, the fruit's consciousness, both Imu's and Xebec's, awakened inside a living vessel. That's why Teach's powers feel unstable and chaotic. The Yami Yami no Mi isn't fully obeying him. It's using him just as it used Xebec. He believes he's the master of darkness, but in truth, he's the pawn of a much older shadow. The divine paradox: if Imu represents eternal control and Xebec represents absolute chaos, then the Yami Yami no Mi is the perfect prison, a container that traps these opposing forces inside one vessel. Imu sealed her will into the fruit to preserve her immortality. Xebec, through his greed, fused a fragment of his own will into it. And now, Teach carries both. Three entities intertwined: the creator, Imu; the usurper, Xebec; the vessel, Teach. Each one fighting for dominance. Each one believing they are in control. But the truth is far more terrifying. The fruit itself, the consciousness born from Imu's void, may have its own will. The Yami Yami no Mi could be a living intelligence, manipulating all three to achieve its ultimate goal: the rebirth of the void, the contrast with Nika. This is where the duality of One Piece shines through. If the Yami Yami no Mi is the manifestation of control, the Nika fruit, the sun god's power, is the embodiment of liberation. They are the two original forces of the world, born from the same moment of creation, the sun and the void, Joy Boy and Imu, freedom and fear. And once again, fate has chosen two inheritors, Luffy and Teach, to reenact that ancient struggle. The battle of dawn and dusk, laughter and despair, light and darkness. But unlike Xebec, Luffy doesn't seek to control the world. He seeks to free it. And that's exactly why he will be the only one capable of breaking Imu's curse once and for all. The Yami Yami no Mi was never meant to exist in mortal hands. It is a divine mistake and the remnant of an immortal's fear. Imu created it to preserve control, Xebec tried to steal it to rule the world, and Teach became its vessel by fate. 3 eras, 3 ambitions, 1 fruit, and as this darkness spreads, Luffy, the sun's chosen, moves closer to the moment when light and shadow will finally collide. When that day comes, the truth about Imu, Xebec, and Teach will shatter the illusion of justice itself, because the real war of One Piece isn't between pirates and marines, it's between the sun and the void, the trinity of wills, Teach, Xebec, and Imu in One Piece. Oda has always emphasized one word more than any other: will. The will of D is not just a name, it's the echo of an ancient force that continues to shape every generation. But what if the most dangerous man alive, Marshall D. Teach, is not carrying just one will, but 3? This theory builds on that foundation, that Teach is a living trinity, a vessel that contains the wills of himself, Rox D. Xebec, and Imu, the godlike ruler of the Void Century. Each of these wills represents a distinct aspect of humanity. Teach, the dreamer; Xebec, the conqueror; Imu, the controller. And together, they form a perfect storm, the chaotic balance between freedom, greed, and domination. 1. The will of Teach, the dreamer before becoming Blackbeard. Teach was just another pirate under Whitebeard's flag, timid, mysterious, and obsessed with destiny. He used to talk about dreams with the same passion as Luffy. He laughed easily. He believed in fate, in the man's age of dreams. This is the real Teach, the will of D that still exists within him. The part that longs for freedom, for discovery, for the legendary treasure left by Joy Boy. Even when Oda shows him smiling and boasting, that laughter, zeh-ha-ha-ha, isn't just villainous arrogance. It's symbolic. It's the distorted reflection of Luffy's laugh. 2 D-bearers who laugh at fate, one in light, one in darkness. But Teach's dream was never simple freedom. He wanted something that would make him untouchable, the power to never lose. That's the first sign that his will was already being corrupted, because the moment you seek freedom through control, you stop being free. 2. The will of Xebec. The conqueror, the second will inside Teach, is the most aggressive, the lingering ambition of Rox D. Xebec, the man who once sought to become king of the world. Everything about Teach's rise mirrors Rox's old path. He gathered infamous pirates under his banner. He attacked the foundations of the world government. He sought to use chaos as a ladder to power. And there's a reason for that parallel. Teach is carrying Xebec's lingering will. When Xebec tried to seize the Yami Yami no Mi decades ago, he didn't just fail, he left a fragment of his own soul trapped within it. When Teach consumed that fruit, the remnant of Xebec's greed fused with his consciousness. That's why Teach's personality shifted completely after eating it. The Teach we saw on Whitebeard's ship was almost harmless, a man who waited decades patiently. But after he consumed the Yami Yami no Mi, he became ruthless. That patience turned into calculation. That dream of freedom twisted into conquest. It's as if a new voice began whispering in his mind, the voice of Rox himself. This is also why Teach refers to his crew as if they're equals, yet he manipulates them like pieces on a chessboard. That's the mark of Xebec, the charisma of a tyrant cloaked in laughter, and it's not a coincidence that Teach's ship is called the Saber of Xebec. It's both tribute and truth, a silent admission that his fate is tied to that ancient monster's will. 3. The will of Imu, the manipulator. The most dangerous part of this trinity, however, is not Xebec. It's Imu's will, sealed within the Yami Yami no Mi itself. While Xebec's spirit drives Teach to conquer, Imu's presence subtly controls and corrupts. That explains why the Yami Yami no Mi behaves differently from any other fruit. It doesn't simply grant power, for it feeds on it. It drags pain, fear, and energy into itself. Even Teach himself screams in agony when using it. He's not channeling the power. He's fighting it. That is Imu's influence, a parasitic consciousness using Teach's body as a vessel to manifest again. Every time Teach absorbs another power, Imu's will grows stronger. Because the true nature of the fruit isn't to empower its user, it's to collect and contain souls. If the Nika fruit liberates, the Yami fruit enslaves. One is the god of freedom, the other the god of control. And as Teach consumes more fruits, more souls, and more chaos, Imu slowly takes back the strength she lost during the Void Century. Blackbeard thinks he's becoming a god, but he's actually becoming the reincarnation of Imu's shadow, the balance of wills. These three wills inside Teach aren't peacefully coexisting. They are constantly fighting for control. The Teach within him wants freedom and dreams. The Zebek within him wants domination and power. The Imu within him wants silence, obedience, and eternal order. This explains the chaotic rhythm of Teach's behavior. Sometimes joyful, sometimes ruthless, sometimes eerily calm. Each mood shift represents a different will taking control, and Oda has hinted at this fragmentation since the very beginning. In Jaya, when Zoro and Luffy discussed Teach, they said, "It's not that there are two people, it's two faces of the same man." That wasn't just metaphorical. That was foreshadowing. The will of D versus the will of the void. What Oda may be building toward is not just a clash of men, but a clash of philosophies, the duality of existence itself. The will of D represents freedom, emotion, and evolution. The will of Imu represents stasis, fear, and eternal control, and Zebek stands between them, the corrupted D who tried to control the gods instead of freeing the world. That's why the three of them, Luffy, Teach, and Imu, are destined to complete the cycle. Luffy, the liberator. Teach, the corrupter. Imu, the eternal prison. Each embodies a fragment of the ancient balance broken during the Void Century. The scientific clue, Teach's body, when Marco said, "Teach's body is different," it wasn't a random comment. The fruit's ability to hold multiple souls inside him may have physically altered his biology, creating three separate spiritual cores within one vessel. In other words, Teach is a living fusion reactor of willpower, constantly burning three sources of energy at once. That's why he never sleeps. That's why his eyes change expression between panels. That's why his laughter sometimes sounds joyous and sometimes demonic. He's not dreaming, he's negotiating. Blackbeard is not evil for the sake of being evil. He's a man divided between three eternal forces. He wants to rule, but he's being ruled. He seeks freedom, but he's enslaved by two ancient powers fighting inside his soul. The will of Teach gives him identity. The will of Zebek gives him ambition. The will of Imu gives him power and chains. And when Luffy eventually faces him, he won't just be fighting one man, he'll be facing three eras of will inside a single body. The dreamer, the tyrant, and the god, a trinity of darkness standing against the light of freedom, the hidden purpose of the Yami. Yami no Mi, every mystery in One Piece, from the Void Century to the Celestial. Dragons revolves around one forbidden question. What did the ancient kingdom create that terrified the world? Most believe it was a weapon. Others think it was a philosophy. But what if it was something much more dangerous, like something alive? This theory proposes that the Yami Yami no Mi wasn't born naturally. It was engineered, the result of an experiment conducted by the ancient kingdom to contain the power of a god, and that god was Imu. The ancient kingdom's greatest sin 800 years ago, the world was ruled by a single advanced civilization, the ancient kingdom. They possessed technology that could manipulate energy, biology, and even the essence of life itself. But their greatest achievement was also their downfall, the creation of devil fruits. According to this theory, the ancient kingdom developed a way to encode human will into matter, transforming emotions and ideas into physical fruits capable of bestowing supernatural powers. It was a scientific attempt to weaponize the soul. Every fruit was a reflection of human desire, to fly, to transform, to dominate, to protect. But among them, one stood apart, the Yami Yami no Mi. Unlike the others, it didn't represent a human wish. It represented a fear, the fear of Imu. The first god of the world before the Void Century, Imu was not a ruler. She was a being of pure energy, a manifestation of the world's will. She existed outside time, like a consciousness watching humanity evolve. But when the ancient kingdom learned to materialize will through devil fruits, they tried to contain her essence, to study, control, and replicate it. The result was catastrophic. The containment process succeeded, but Imu's consciousness corrupted the experiment, giving birth to something the world could never control. The Yami Yami no Mi, the fruit of the void. It didn't just absorb light, it absorbed meaning. It erased truth, rewrote memory, and devoured identity. And from that moment on, Imu ceased to be a spirit. She became a physical entity, a being bound to the material world through the Yami Yami no Mi. That's why she cannot die. That's why she can rule forever. Because her essence is the fruit itself. She doesn't possess the Yami Yami no Mi. She is the Yami Yami no Mi, the birth of the curse. When the ancient kingdom realized what they had created, it was too late. Imu's consciousness spread like a virus through the energy network that powered their civilization. To stop it, they created 3 countermeasures, what the world government would later call the ancient weapons. Each weapon wasn't designed to destroy the world, but to seal it, to contain the growing will of Imu by controlling the 3 elements of creation, the sea, Poseidon, the earth, Pluton, and the sky, Uranus. But the plan failed. Imu survived the sealing and took control of the world instead, using the power of the Yami Yami no Mi to rewrite history, erasing the name of the ancient kingdom and branding them as devils. The surviving nations, terrified by her power, united under her new empire, the world government, and so began the Void Century, the century in which the truth itself was devoured by darkness. The echo of that power in the present now, centuries later the same fruit resurfaces, but this time it finds not a scientist, not a god, but a man born with the will of D, a descendant of the very people Imu erased. When Teach consumes the fruit, the cycle restarts. The consciousness of Imu, trapped within the fruit for 800 years, awakens inside him, and that's why his rise feels unnatural, as if history is repeating itself. Every act of Teach mirrors the original sin of the ancient kingdom, the attempt to harness divine power for mortal use, and every time he uses that fruit, the world around him reacts. Storms rage, gravity bends, light disappears. Because the fruit isn't channeling energy, it's correcting reality back toward its origin, the void. That's the hidden purpose of the Yami Yami no Mi. It's not a weapon. It's a restoration program, a metaphysical system designed to bring the world back under Imu's control whenever her vessel reappears. And that vessel is now Teach, the mirror of the sun in contrast, the Hito Hito no Mi, model Nika, Luffy's fruit, was the counterbalance. It was the ancient kingdom's final creation, made not to control, but to liberate. The sun god's fruit was encoded with the opposite principle. Rather than absorb will, it releases it. It spreads joy, freedom, and motion, the natural antidote to stagnation and fear. That's why when Luffy awakens Nika, the world literally laughs. And when Teach uses Yami, the world screams. The 2 fruits aren't enemies by coincidence. They're mathematical opposites, created by the same civilization. One to imprison a god, one to free mankind from her shadow. The final revelation. The Yami no Mi, therefore, isn't just the strongest devil fruit. It's the original sin of mankind, the fruit that bound the divine to the material world, giving birth to all other devil fruits as imperfect copies of that first experiment. That's why each fruit reappears after its user dies. They're fragments of the same program, smaller echoes of the original Yami system. The devil fruits are the children of the void, and Blackbeard, by combining multiple fruits, is unconsciously reconstructing the network that once connected the entire world, the same network that gave Imu her godhood. He's not gaining power, he's restoring the machine that will awaken her completely. The truth is this: the Yami Yami no Mi was never meant to be eaten. It was meant to be sealed, hidden, destroyed, forgotten. But fate, through the will of D, and brought it back into the hands of a man who dreams too much and fears too little. Blackbeard thinks he's chasing power, but in reality, power is chasing him. The fruit is not a weapon, it's a key. And when it turns, the doors of the void, Sentry will open again, unleashing the will of Imu across the world once more. And that's why Luffy must stop him. Not just to save his era, but to end the cycle that began 800 years ago. The final battle will not be for treasure, but for the fate of existence itself. The clash of eras, Luffy versus Imu forever. 1,000 years, two forces have silently shaped the fate of the One Piece world. The will of the sun, embodied by the Nika fruit, and the will of the void, sealed within the Yami Yami no Mi. These aren't just devil fruits. They are the manifestation of two universal laws, freedom and control. And in the current era, they have chosen two inheritors, Monkey D. Luffy, the man of joy, and Marshall D. Teach, the man of darkness. But behind both of them, there is something far older, something watching, waiting, calculating. Imu, the unseen ruler of the world, the being who once tried to erase laughter itself. The war of wills, when Imu finally reveals herself to the world, the chaos will begin, not as a war between pirates and the Navy, but between ideologies. Imu represents the belief that the world can only exist through order, that free will must be controlled to prevent destruction. She calls it balance, but in truth, it is stagnation, a universe frozen in fear. Luffy, on the other hand, represents the opposite, a world where everything moves, changes, grows, and laughs. He doesn't seek power or control. He simply acts, a symbol of natural freedom. Their confrontation, therefore, is not a battle of strength. It's the clash of two philosophies that have existed since creation itself. The darkness of US. Imuimu's power, derived from the Yami Yami no Mi, is absolute absorption. She consumes everything, light, memory, even history. That's why the Void Century exists. She didn't just erase it, she ate it. Every trace of that era was devoured by her fruit, absorbed into the void. She sits upon the empty throne not as a ruler, but as a black hole in the shape of a god. A being that maintains power through the absence of truth. That's why she hides. That's why she never speaks publicly. The less the world knows, the more she exists. In this sense, Imu is not simply evil. She is the fear of chaos given form. The fear that freedom will destroy everything. And in her own twisted logic, she believes she's saving humanity from itself. That's what makes her terrifying. She's not a villain who wants to kill. She's a god who wants to preserve, by suffocating. The light of Nika opposing her is the light, the laughter that refuses to die. The Hito Hito no Mi model. Nika embodies motion, chaos, and unpredictability. It is the fruit that cannot be tamed, the will that cannot be caged. When Luffy awakens as Nika, the very air begins to dance. Matter bends to joy. The environment becomes part of his laughter. His power doesn't destroy, it liberates. That's why the Gorosei call it the most ridiculous power in the world, because it defies logic. It's not bound by pain, gravity, or even fear. It's life in its purest form, and that's precisely what Imu's darkness cannot tolerate. Because where there is laughter, there can be no silence. The philosophical parallel Luffy and Imu are not just enemies, they are reflections. Each represents a truth that the world needs, but taken to the extreme, both become destructive. Imu's world of perfect order becomes tyranny. Luffy's world of total freedom risks chaos. This is the final balance Oda may reveal, that the true purpose of the will of D isn't to destroy one side, but to restore equilibrium. Luffy doesn't need to kill Imu, he needs to free her, to release the human will trapped inside the god of void. That's the real victory of Nika. Liberation through joy, not domination through death. The battle that defines the world. Imagine the moment when Luffy finally faces Imu. The sky turns black, the seas tremble, the red line cracks, and at the center of the world, the sun god confronts the void. Every strike from Luffy unleashes waves of light, each one distorting reality with cartoonish elasticity. Every counter from Imu absorbs that light, swallowing it into nothingness. Freedom versus control. Laughter versus silence. Creation versus oblivion. The battlefield itself becomes symbolic. Luffy's heartbeat, the drums of liberation, echoing louder with every punch, and Imu's silence spreading like suffocating gravity, crushing everything around. This isn't just the final battle, it's the rebirth of the world. The role of Teach in the final war, but here lies the twist. Teach stands between them. He is both the weapon and the key. His body, housing the wills of Teach, Zebek, and Imu, becomes the bridge between the sun and the void. When Luffy faces Imu, Teach will no longer be a villain. He will be the vessel through which the final balance must pass. Imu will try to reclaim him, to absorb her missing essence and regain full godhood. But Luffy, through the power of Nika, will awaken Teach's true self. The kind man buried beneath the darkness, the dreamer who once laughed under Whitebeard's flag. At that moment, the three wills inside Teach will collide, his own, Zebek's, and Imu's, and the Yami Yami no Mi will reach its limit. The fruit will begin to collapse, unable to sustain three souls anymore. And that's when Luffy will do what no one else can. He'll laugh, a laugh so loud, so pure that it tears through the darkness itself. The meaning of the will of D, the D has always stood for danger, dream, dawn. But above all, defiance. The descendants of the D carry the will to challenge gods, to stand against fear, and to bring back the forgotten truth. It's not about bloodline, it's about spirit. Every D inherits the courage to laugh in the face of the void, and in this final clash, that laughter will become the sound that saves the world. Because Oda has shown us time and time again, the greatest strength in One Piece isn't rage. It's joy. That's what the world forgot. And that's what Luffy will remind it. The new dawn as the battle reaches its end. The darkness begins to fade. The red sky turns gold. The seas calm. And in the ruins of Pangaea Castle, the sun rises for the first time in 1,000 years. Not the physical sun, but the symbolic one. The return of truth. Luffy stands in the light, smiling. Not because he won, but because the world is finally free to choose. No rulers, no gods, no curses, just people laughing again. The void century will no longer be void, because laughter will have filled it once more. The final battle isn't about who is stronger. It's about who understands the world better. Imu fights for stillness. Luffy fights for motion. Imu fears chaos. Luffy embraces it. And when they collide, both forces will merge into something new. A balance between order and freedom, control and joy. The dawn will come not from destruction, but from harmony. Because the true message of One Piece has always been this: the world will only be free when even the gods learn to laugh. The final truth, the liberation of the world and the end of the void when the dust settles. The world will no longer be the same. The sea will be quiet, the sky golden, and the cries of war will fade into a silence so deep it feels sacred. The long night that began 800 years ago will finally end. Because in that silence, the world will have heard the sound that Imu tried to erase. Laughter, the collapse of the void. As Imu's defeat unfolds, her body and power begin to unravel. But unlike villains before her, she does not simply fall, she dissolves. Her essence, the pure energy of control and silence, disperses into the atmosphere like mist. The Yami Yami no Mi, which for centuries served as her vessel, begins to fracture under the weight of its own contradictions. Inside it, the three wills, Teach, Zebek, and Imu, clash for the final time. It's not a fight of fists, but of ideology. Teach, the dreamer, longs for freedom. Zebek, the conqueror, desires dominance. Imu, the god, craves order. The Yami Yami no Mi, unable to contain this trinity, begins to collapse into itself, becoming a singularity of will. It's the literal end of the void, the moment when darkness consumes itself, but just before it vanishes, something unexpected happens. A sound cuts through the silence, a heartbeat. The same rhythm that once echoed in Luffy, the drums of liberation. The void trembles. The fruit shatters. And for the first time in history, darkness laughs. The resurrection of Meaning Imu's control vanishes, but her consciousness doesn't die. It's freed. She sees for the first time the world she tried to freeze, chaotic, alive, imperfect, but beautiful. She understands what Joy Boy tried to tell her centuries ago, that freedom isn't the enemy of order, it's its foundation. A world without movement becomes a cage. A world without laughter becomes a tomb. As her last act, Imu uses what remains of her power to dissolve the curse she spread across the seas, the clouds that once blocked the sun part, revealing a clear sky stretching across all oceans. The red line begins to crack, breaking into islands and waterways. The four seas reconnect, and the world, for the first time since the Void Century, becomes one again. The redemption of Teach, while the world awakens. Teach, the man who was once feared as a monster, lies broken but alive. He no longer bears the Yami fruit's power. It has disappeared with Imu, but for the first time his face is peaceful. The constant chaos inside him is gone. Luffy approaches him, not as an enemy but as an equal. Teach looks up and smiles, not with arrogance but with relief. He whispers, "So this is freedom." And in that moment his laughter returns, not the cruel laugh of darkness, but the genuine laugh of the man he once was. The will of D inside him, finally unshackled, merges with the will of those who came before. He too becomes part of the dawn, because in the end, even darkness has the right to dream. The dawn of the new era, the fall of Imu and the unification of the seas mark the beginning of a new age, the era of freedom. The world government collapses, the celestial dragons vanish from history, and nations once enslaved by the system rise again. But unlike the past, there is no single ruler. There is no king of the world, because the truth that Luffy represents isn't a throne, it's the destruction of thrones. The dawn doesn't belong to one man, it belongs to everyone. In this era, the descendants of the D aren't seen as devils anymore. They are recognized as what they always were, dreamers. The D never stood for destruction. It stood for dawn, the will to bring light to where there was none, the meaning of the One Piece, and now at last the true treasure, the One Piece, is revealed. It's not gold nor power nor technology. It's a message left by Joy Boy at the end of the Void Century, a single phrase engraved in the language of the ancient kingdom. The world will be free when laughter returns to the sea. The One Piece is the memory of laughter itself, the proof that humanity once lived without fear. When Luffy reads it, he doesn't cry. He laughs. A laugh so honest and powerful that it echoes across every island, every ship, every heart. And that laughter connects the entire world, the final awakening of the Nika fruit, not as a weapon, but as a collective consciousness of joy. The moment Luffy laughs, the seas calm. The sun rises, and every nation hears it. The same laughter that once echoed through Joy Boy. The same laughter that survived through the D lineage. The same laughter that finally ends the void. The true will of D, the will of D, isn't a prophecy. It's a promise. A chain of souls spanning centuries, born to ensure that the world never forgets the sound of freedom. Each D is a carrier of that sound, a piece of the symphony that defies gods. Roger laughed at death. Luffy laughs at destiny. And through them, the world learns to laugh again. This is why every D dies smiling, because they know something the rest of the world has forgotten. Death isn't the end. Silence is. As long as someone is laughing, the D lives on. The balance restored with Imu gone and the seas united, the two ancient forces, the sun and the void, finally reach harmony. The world no longer needs gods or rulers. It has balance. Luffy sails once again, but this time there is no destination. He doesn't want to rule. He just wants to keep moving, keep smiling, keep living. The Straw Hats disband, each chasing new adventures. The age of pirates ends not in conquest but in liberation. The great era of freedom begins, and high above the seas, on a calm morning, the last vestige of darkness fades. The void is gone. The world breathes. The laughter continues. The legacy of the sun. Centuries later, children across the world will hear the story of the boy who laughed against the gods. They'll speak of the age when laughter defeated silence, when light met shadow and turned it into dawn. And every time they laugh, the will of Nika will echo once more, not as myth, but as instinct, because joy, like light, cannot be destroyed. It can only be forgotten, and Luffy, through his journey, ensured it would never be forgotten again. The Yami Yami no Mi, the curse of control, is gone. The Nika fruit, the gift of freedom, remains. But the world no longer sees them as enemies. They are now understood for what they always were, two halves of the same will, the desire to exist. Imu sought eternity. Luffy sought life. And through their clash, both found meaning. That is the true One Piece. Not a treasure, not a weapon, not a crown, but the understanding that laughter itself is the bond that unites all things. And so, the narrator closes. The era of gods has ended. The era of laughter has begun. This was the will of D, this was the dawn, this was One Piece, and that was the theory. The truth behind Imu, Teach, and the will that shaped the world. If you believe laughter can change everything, you carry the will of D inside you too. I'm Mr. Peace, and I'll see you in the next video.